you are gonna see some cool ass shit.
Yeah, you don't want 2 Flavor Flays.
Heart transplants, brain surgeries. I've seen it all.
Dude, that's fucking dope.
Walk up and just get it, whatever it is.
Yeah, brother.
I'm trying not to laugh, bro, but Josh is fucking killing me.
Guess what Navy SEALs do, motherfucker? They communicate and they're on the same fucking page.
Whoa. Yeah.
We're rolling.
All right. Welcome back to the Happy Hoodlums podcast, everybody. It's your boy, Kemper Woodruff, the Happy Hoodlum himself. And we have Zachary shadow boxing right by his chest. Big pecs in the house. Zachary Kane Simpson. Yeah, we ain't got sound effects, so I'm going to make them ghetto style. That's better. My shit sound like a fucked up tuba or something, or a tugboat. But welcome back, everybody. I guess we're gonna start with a little bit of a ramble per usual, because Zach was asking me what was on my mind before the camera started rolling, and had a little bit of an epiphany at the gym today, yet again, because also I think it's the thing that I'm most consistent in the craft and like dedicating myself to the study of right now. Although I'm studying my real estate stuff, I'm at the gym every day, and it's a little bit more fulfilling in its give back to me right now. So just to preface this, but I wanted to talk about how small steps are really the big steps, and the things that seem like big steps, you know, because you get these like superficial gains, you know. And I noticed this through like larger muscle groups developing quicker as I was doing compound lifts like squatting, right? And I'm really like hyper focused on squatting as a good like metric for where I'm going. Not only because it's helping my body to grow, but it was like my worst lift that I was the most scared of growing up, right? And so I'm hyper focused on it, especially because my form is really important to me. And I have to make sure when I'm loading like weight on my back because of like the 2 herniated discs that I had to not fuck that up, right? And so I was doing some squatting today, and I was working with like what would probably be lightweight to Zach, but it was like 230 pounds, right? And I was like, all right, this is my new, like, I was stepping up my comfortable rep range, you know, because I still want to work with higher volume, but continually make it more and more difficult for myself. And I noticed that when I went from like 210 up to 230, my inner groin, like the short adductor group, which is really just like high crotch, right? On your inside of your thighs. I noticed that was now the weakest point in my thighs, you know? And as I was, you know, continually going through this lifting phase where I was on about probably set 3 or 4. I think it was 3 when I really started to notice as I was coming out of the lift, right, from the lowest point, my inner groin and my pelvis would kind of want to move a little bit rather than staying back and just kind of coming up evenly through like a hip hinge, you know? But anyways, that's a little detailed on the lift. The point being, I realized I was like, all these fucking muscles, like the quads and the hamstrings and stuff that developed way faster, right? These bigger muscles that were carrying the bulk of this weight and doing the work could only take me so far before I had to get to this seemingly less superficial muscle, right? This smaller muscle. And yet that's what's preventing me at this point from developing in my progress from good to like great, right? And it made me look at life, and I was like, although I'm learning this in the gym, this is something that's like way applicable to everybody's life. And I was like, people rely on talent and they get burned out because they don't really love the work that it takes, like the craftsmanship that goes into learning the intricacies and working on the finer details that take you from a good athlete, a good real estate broker, a good painter, whatever it is, to excellent, right? And it made me look at it like you feel like you're taking these huge steps in the beginning. And this goes back to you telling me beginner gains. So let me just insert Zach's right in this way. I'll never give him the full thing, but he's right about this. And so you get these like incredible leaps forward, and you think that those are the big steps, but really those are the small steps. And as you begin working on those subtleties, right? Once you've taken it as far as you can with your base level of like entry level foundational knowledge, right? That's when those intricacies and the subtleties need to be developed because they present themselves, in the ways that they prevent you from progressing, and it's like, that's something that I think a lot of people quit early on, because if you're just looking for the end result and you don't enjoy the process of the work that it takes to actually get beyond that barrier from good to great to excellent, a lot of people just, they're not invested. And so they'll never really appreciate the actual activity. They're just looking for the reward of doing the activity, and I learned it in the gym, but I think it's a really, transferable topic
Yeah.
in life.
The crazy part is though, it's like you beginner gains last for like the first year of working out, which is pretty like spectacular. So like if you're consistent and you work at it, even if like you're doing 4 days a week, you can make pretty crazy progress in a year as a beginner. And if you have more guidance in terms of like workout structure, eating, and all that other shit, you can make ridiculous progress in your first year. A lot of people see, like, especially people who, most people, see a little bit of like a weight reduction at first because they start losing water weight because they're sweating more and shit. And so like people lose like 5 or 10 pounds off rip when they first start working out. And it's pretty crazy to think about. And then they gain that all back in muscle very quickly, pretty much. And it's kind of insane. And then even with like the strength gains and stuff like that, a beginner can put on like 50 to 100 pounds in their overall PRs in like a year or something like that, right? Depending on where they are at and shit and how hard they decide to start pushing themselves and stuff like that. But like on top, in terms of like what you were talking about with those smaller muscle groups, a lot of people tend to neglect smaller muscle groups because you can't see them. And so kind of like what you were going off of, a lot of people focus on the end result rather than the process it takes to get there. And so and a good example of that, right, is me deadlifting, right? When you deadlift, or a lot of people try and just get the heaviest deadlift that they possibly can and then fucking leave the gym, right? Without really thinking about how their body's feeling after the deadlift. And so something that I noticed after I hit my recent lifetime PR was I had a lot of I felt my right side of my low back, and I didn't feel anything in the left side of my back at all. So it was almost like I was pulling that deadlift up with just the right side of my back rather than both sides. And then I attributed that to some of my glute pain that I have in my right glute, your right ass cheek, for anyone who doesn't know the terminology. I run into so many people who don't know what glutes are. It's insane. But yeah, my right ass cheek was hurting, and it hurts consistently unless I stretch and do certain workouts.
Mhm.
But so taking that information, being mindful and cognizant of my body and the way that it feels in that movement, I started programming myself to do heavy-ish deadlifts, but with the idea of going slow and focusing on the left side of my back. And so, like, for another example of what I'm also working on is during that PR attempt, in the video, as I'm going up, I twist to my right. So it was an
Mm.
obvious reason as to why I'm pulling with just the right side of my back, because I'm literally twisting. And so focusing on the smaller aspects of the lift, pulling it and really pulling it into the left side of my body, keeping that bar really against myself and making sure that
Mhm.
it's moving in a straight line rather than to one side or the other. And then I went even further than that. After my sets of deadlift, I grab a kettlebell and I do single arm deadlifts. Um, and so I put my wrist straps on so I don't have to worry about my grip. And I'm focusing, I'm focusing on my core strength. So I'm squeezing my core and I'm focusing on, rather than pulling one way or the other, I'm trying to make sure that I'm moving my chest up and down straight in a straight line, focusing on either side of my back. So like if it's in my right hand, the left side of my back is going to be more active because it's on the opposite. It's going to be the side that's pulling the most. Left hand, other way around. And so that's just another aspect of trying to fix these small little things to get to a better deadlift. And so what people don't think about is like, okay, should I work adduction and abduction for my hips, right? For my hip flexors and my glutes and shit like that. So like what you were talking about, doing adduction work might help strengthen the inner part of your thigh, right?
Mhm.
Which might make your squat stronger in the long run. And so when people get into working out, they don't think about that unless they have someone who's guiding them down
Well, I
this
think a
road.
lot of people find out late, bro.
Yeah,
Like, I
for
think
real,
a
they
lot of
do.
people find up with like a hernia or something and be like, what the fuck happened? You
Yeah,
know? Because they're not really paying attention. And it's like you can go so far, but it's once you're really at that, like when you're pushing the limit, you know, that's when the wobble shows up. Like when you're going your fastest, that's when if you stumble a little bit, you know, if you have something that's tripping you a little bit, that resistance is gonna present itself dramatically,
yeah,
you know, if you don't correct it earlier. Because this was kind of making me think about balance and harmony in like a greater perspective, you know,
hmm
not just in the gym, but in everything in life. Side note, what was your PR?
415.
Talk that shit, son. Okay, how much do you weigh right now?
Uh, I stepped on the scale last weekend at 180.
Woo! That's big boy numbers. Okay, now we can continue because I gotta just applaud you real quick. But kind of taking it out of the gym, right? Do you have anything in any area of your life where you noticed you could go really far um, with talent, or that you made a lot of progress, but then you hit a wall or something? Like there's
Yeah,
something that you fell out of love with craft wise because you just wanted the result of the craft, but didn't want to work on it.
yeah, I do. And the funny thing is it, uh, it's video shit.
Mm,
And it's not that I fell out of love with it. I enjoy it. But my problem was I got so many praises and achieved quite a lot of things before graduating college,
yeah.
um, that I was never able to achieve again. And because I got so many praises, and this kind of goes back to what we were talking about, I think a couple episodes ago, where if I get
Hmm.
too much praise, I tend to get really complacent. And so I have to have like people being really fucking hard on me. Not really hard on me, but being like on my ass about not like quitting and not uh getting complacent and always wanting to get better and shit like that. And so like I think because of that, I got really complacent thinking, "Oh, I'm really fucking good at this shit. I don't need to work harder and shit like that because I'm good. I'm great at this shit from what everyone's telling me, right?"
Yeah.
And like my biggest check that I ever made doing editing, in 2 weeks I made $8,000,
Mm-hmm.
and that was when I was 18. And so I'm doing that when I'm 18, and I'm thinking I'm fucking good, bro. I'm gonna be able to do this shit. I'm gonna be living like a fucking baller, and I never get that again, right? And so going from that, and then slowly fucking never getting any type of work, and then spending 3 years trying to find a job in that field and not even getting an interview. It's like it becomes this thing where it's like, okay, maybe I should have worked harder, but now I don't even have the motivation or the love for it as I did to even work harder to get better at it.
Mm-hmm.
And so like I still, when I have a project, I do I research and I try and get better at it while working on a project, but in between projects there's nothing because I'm not
Mm-hmm.
like that much. I'm not as in love with it as I used to be, right?
Mm-hmm.
And that same thing also applied at one point when I was working out. There was a time where I didn't have like a gym to go to. I was working out at home. I wasn't seeing any progress. I wasn't noticing any progress that I wanted, and I had stopped working out for like 3 or 4 months. And my dad actually mentioned this to me the other day. He was like, "I am glad you got back into working out because you were spending too much time in your fucking room." That was when I lived with them like 2 years ago in 2022 or 21.
Yeah.
And so I was like, "Yeah, dude, I'm fucking glad too. Like, let me tell you what, I'm fucking happy too." So like, that's kind of like that realm of like, I started off talented and good, but I think I experienced too much success early on, and it didn't stay consistent, and so it really like kind of burnt me out.
I think there's something to this also because, like, falling in love with work, right?
Yeah.
And if you haven't fallen in love with work yet, you're not working hard enough. And, last week I was talking about that whole keep it real scale because
Hmm.
what you were just describing is a fucked up keep it real scale, you know, where it's like all of a sudden I stop being my um, harshest critic, but also greatest advocate, you know? The only way I can be my greatest advocate is if I'm my harshest critic.
Yeah.
And that goes into that whole duality and balance. Like, that's what creates harmony, right? And that's why this was such an epiphany for me, because I was realizing, I was like, if you're not seeing the result that you really, really want, the truth is you haven't put enough work in.
Yeah.
You're not working hard enough to find the right way to work. Like, because you can work really hard in a very inefficient, fucked up way,
Oh,
right? Or you can
100%.
feel like you're doing the most when really you're doing nothing productive, right?
Yeah.
And I think that happens to a lot of people. Um, and I just had this moment of clarity where I was like, fuck, you fall in love with the work when you get the results from the work, you know, because those milestones validate your journey. And it can be something as little as like going back to, the craft of bodybuilding, you know, and building the program and what I'm doing right now. It's like when I come across an interview of like one of these incredible bodybuilders, and I just get a tiny little gold nugget. It might be the way that they do their curls,
Yeah.
right? It might be a supplement that they took and why they took it. I'm like, fuck yeah. Like, I'm so excited. And I go and I like compile it in this, note section that I have on my phone that I'm building. And I feel so rewarded by it. And even in just like the journey of, for instance, abs, right? I was like someone that I've always had like good abdominal muscles, but I was like, I want to be like fucking shredded. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I love working out because I've said this before. You get that preview of what's to come when that pump hits you. And so I was sitting there and I was looking at myself because I had done a ton of ab work before I left the gym today, right? And previously I had put in like maybe like, I don't know, I'd say like 10 or 15 minutes. And I felt pretty good while I was at the gym, but they didn't really last, right?
Yeah.
And I was like, okay, well, next time I'm going to do more. Next time I'm going to do more. And I just kept doing a little more each time for this past like week when I was like, fuck it, I'm doing it every day. I love this shit. I'm doing it every day. I want the result. I don't give a fuck. I'm doing it. You know what I mean? And after doing it like that, I'd look way better already. And I was like, oh, I was like, you fall in love with the work when you see the result. So if you're not working fucking hard enough, you're going to burn the fuck out. That's where the real burnout happens.
I
Is when
think
you should get more for less. That's where the fucking burnout is. When you want to be a type of motherfucker and get above average, excellent fucking results while doing just enough to get that result. And
I
that's
think
someone that goes, yeah, go on.
I think it depends on, so like going back to my example, right? If you experience too much success at the beginning and then you plateau, and this is also, prevalent to working out, right? Um, People experience a lot of success at the beginning with the beginner gains, then they plateau, and then they don't know what to do or where to go from there, right? And then it gets a little discouraging. But the people who educate themselves and continue to learn because they fell in love with the process, like you did, or like you're talking about, they bump themselves up. But if they experience so much success with the beginner gains, and they're too obsessed with, like you're talking about, the end result, and then they plateau, then they're like, well, fuck, this is it. This is the best I could get. And then that's when they fall off or they stay stagnant and they just work out and they're just doing the same shit for years and they never really do anything that's going to get them anywhere.
I think about it like traveling, kind of. This is a good way to put it, is that some people sell themselves that the destination is the goal, right?
Yeah.
And there's other motherfuckers that just love to travel. They just like exploring. So for me, I look at it like, how can I be bored when there's like an unlimited way for me to explore this topic? And I, side note, discovered, shout out to Golden Era Bookworm. His channel is fucking incredible on YouTube. If you don't know about it, check that shit out. But he did a series of like, and it's only a short series. I think it's pretty recent, but about 80s like film actors, and like action movie stars and what they did for their workouts. And he did one about Chuck Norris. That Chuck Norris is a fucking legend, son. He did like 3 hours just as his warm up. He could do like 50 pull-ups straight. Like, them Chuck Norris facts are fucking facts for real. Yeah. You can laugh at that all you want, bro. I'm just saying.
No,
That shit blew my mind, dog.
Like, my thing is like, okay, I've been watching. The funny thing is I've been watching, I've been watching breakdowns of celebrity workout videos for like the newer movies, like the Marvel and DC movies.
Huh. I didn't even know what that was.
Well, some people do. So like some people like there are some personal trainers that are really big in the movie industry that will make videos based on like, all right, this is the Wonder Woman workout. This is how we got Wonder Woman to look like Wonder Woman for the movie, right? They'll make those videos. But then this YouTube channel that I watch breaks them down into and breaks down the efficiency of it. And if it really is going to work or if that's like kind of bullshit and could they have done it differently to get better results. And so like watching these watching a lot of them and seeing them even as like my level of knowledge and fitness, I look at it and I'm like, just at my level, I'm seeing it and I'm like, that is not a good way to fucking do that. And so when I hear about celebrity workouts, I'm like, I get really like hesitant to even. I'll listen to it and I'll look at it because some of them actually do have really good, like workouts, like from their trainers, and some trainers are really good, but the ones that I'm seeing, they're like, they have so much bullshit and like fluff material in there. It's like you could do this so much better. Like 50 pull-ups, for example, right? If you can do 50 pull-ups, that's amazing, but at some point you should start loading your pull-ups so that you can then progressively overload your pull-ups, get even better, and build your lats even bigger if that's what your goal is.
As a red bearded man, you should slap yourself because Chuck Norris is the fucking GOAT. So
I'm not shit talking Chuck Norris, but I'm saying he could have had bigger lats if he loaded his pull-ups.
I'm just letting you know that motherfucker is a legit martial artist.
And I'm not saying anything about his martial arts. I believe it.
Zach.
Okay? I know. Look, I'm not talking shit about Chuck Norris right now.
All right.
I'm not. I'm just saying, if he loaded his pull-ups, he could have had bigger lats.
Dude, you got life fucked up right now. If you told Chuck Norris that,
but that's also dependent on his goal, right? Does he want bigger lats? If not, continue to do 50 pull-ups in a row. But
Chuck Norris
it just depends on the goals. So, but like for you, Kemper, right? For you, every time we talk about your set and rep range, I'm like, all right, I know you want to get big, right? Yeah. So I'm always gonna discourage you. I'm always gonna discourage you from doing sets of 20 to 30 because that's training your muscle fibers in a different way. That's not training your muscle fibers for growth. It's training them for endurance.
I get it.
Right? So I'm gonna tell you, just depending on your goals, I'm gonna say, hey, do it this way, and you'll experience a little bit different. Do it for a couple weeks, see how it works, and then change it up again. But fucking yeah.
You just got to the gold nugget of it all. I've fallen in love with the changing up and experiencing. Like just literally it's an endless exploration of the ways that you can do shit, you know? Yeah. And I'm starting to look at things like, all right, what did this person do to get that result? Mm-hmm. Right? And then mimic that shit, you know? And then basically make a concoction of like my own little strategy. And I'm just enjoying that, you know?
And the crazy part is like based on like what you're learning from other people, what worked for them, you trying it out is great, but then you'll learn what works for you, even if it's not what worked for other people, and then you'll go from there. But there's this other thing that I wanted to mention because there's this. All right. So Misa, right? Misa's a big ass motherfucker at the gym, right? Mm-hmm. He does 7 sets of 20 on a lot of his movements, right? When he's bodybuilding. And the way that I talk to him, because I always talk to him, I'm like, dude, that's too many sets, that's too many reps. And the way that I talk to him is I'm like, it works for you, obviously, because you're big as fuck. But could it work better this way? You don't know, because you could push yourself just as close to failure in 4 sets than as you are in 7, but you're able, because you're only doing 4 sets, you can get way more recovery and your muscles are ready to go just as within a couple days, and you're experiencing less fatigue, systemic fatigue, right? So then you're able to go for the next workout and then the next workout. And it's not burning you out because you're doing so much fucking volume for no reason. Like your fatigue, it's not just based on your pump and all this other shit. You got to remember, and then goes back to our small things, your fatigue level and what you're doing in this workout right now is going to affect your workout tomorrow, your workout the next day, and your workout the next day. Are you fatiguing yourself too much to be able to work out the next day? Right?
Bro,
and if you're fatiguing yourself so much that you need fucking two energy drinks and pre-workout and fucking mid workout carbs and all this other shit, you're fatiguing yourself so much that you need all that even on a calorie surplus. Right? So like what are you doing?
Bro,
can this be better?
I understand the can it be better part. That's the gold nugget in there. Because I'm going to tell you right now, bro, I believe in fucking enthusiasm. And when you don't have enthusiasm and you're like, fuck, I don't want to do this, those are some of my best fucking workouts. You know what I mean?
100%. That's discipline.
Yeah, exactly. And that's fucking growth. And that's why I'm saying you just need to fucking, like, when you fall in love with that shit, like, I'm not doing it because I'm like, oh, this is scientifically inaccurate. What I'm doing is a detriment. Like, no, bro, I don't even see it or believe that shit, bro. I truly look at it like I fucking love this shit. And I can be tired as fuck, bro. I can get my muscles super duper fatigued, like work to burnout, failure on a set, right? And just straight up go, all right, now that I've worked my arms to failure, I'm going back to abs, right? Go back to abs. By the time I get done, I got more to fucking, I'm like, I want to do more. And I just want to do more. And I just want to do more. And I'm just like lost in there having no sense of time whatsoever. Just like, fuck it, I just want to do another one. And all that I can equate that to is like, that's just like love and like passion for something, you know? And there is a point where it's like, I think we need to be diverse as people. Like, we weren't made to just do that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
No matter what you choose, if you just do that one and only thing, eventually that's not going to be conducive to the life you want in totality, you know? But while you're there, like and when you're in one of those phases where you're truly like discovering something and you love it, like discover the fuck out of it. Like observe the shit out of it. Go fucking balls deep in that motherfucker and figure that shit out. You know? Like love it like it's the fucking one and only. Like this might be your last day. Shit. I had that fucking pre-workout with the beta-alanine because I was trying a different kind of day and too much caffeine and shit, bro. I thought it might have been my last day. I was fucking in there itching, my heart is...
Yeah,
I was
bro.
like, bro, that's fucking for real sit-ups to failure, son. I almost went out.
That's why I don't take pre-workouts anymore because of that. I've started having better workouts not drinking caffeine before a workout than I have on pre-workout.
I can dig it.
Yeah.
I'm not going to dispute that one works better than the other, for real.
I'm not saying one works better than the other. I'm just saying it works better for me not to have caffeine.
Yeah, yeah. And I think that's kind of how it is. Like, everything's personal, but the fundamental truths exist across the board. No matter what activity you go through, you'll discover these same things that we're talking about, you know? That's why I was saying it's like transferable truths, you know? These are like universal principles.
Yeah.
You know? And it governs everything. And I'm just learning through my body because it gives you feedback that's very accentuated, you know, in comparison to subtleties of the mind, because we're oftentimes overstimulated mentally and understimulated physically in this day and age, you know?
Yeah.
And it's just kind of interesting how things progress. You know, it's like a different kind of meditation. Another thing that I've discovered is like that Viking shit of like calling on your like loved ones that have passed and stuff to like watch over you when you go to like battle. That shit applies to the gym, like straight up. And I
Yeah.
think we don't really, because we're looking for the body of that person, we discredit the energy that their consciousness and their focus can send to you, bro. Like when I'm in the gym, I'm in a whole different place. You know, like you might see my body going into this workout, but it's almost like my body's fucking a machine at that moment. You know what I mean? My mind is off in fucking the fucking cosmos of love. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Straight up. Sometimes I'm like, fucking get that shit. Other times I'm like mad tender. You know, like I'll think about shit that makes me fucking cry. And it's like I'm literally off in the realm of my just like emotions and consciousness while my body's going through this. And like my body's just doing the motions. And I think a lot of it has to do with breath work, you know? Because that shit is like, that's where I realized like energy is truly fucking infinite. Like we limit ourselves. Like if you tell yourself, I'm 12 reps, right? I'm gonna do 12 repetitions. By the time you get to 12, you're tired. But if you don't say that, right? You just go. Just keep going. And just really ask yourself, do I feel it? Can I keep going? All right, then keep going. You know? And seek that perpetual like enjoyment of the activity that is pleasurably difficult, you know?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have like a rebound effect, it's like a rubber band, you know? That shit'll come back, and it'll come back, and it'll come back, and you're just testing that pull on it, you know? And that shit is awesome, you know? Learning how to do that and take that to other areas of your life, which we've kind of gone round and round on this. So the next point that I want to make is something that I really started to look at my life through the lens of points of failure, right?
Mm-hmm.
What's hindering my progress? And so I was looking at like, well, in my program of my day, oftentimes I'll find myself like watching a movie or something, even like YouTube, you know, not spending enough time in my own thoughts. As much as I love the thoughts of other people, if the fundamental truth is all the same, you know, and we're realizing these things, if I'm not seeking super specialized knowledge in an area that I have um, no knowledge about, and I'm not experiencing it by actually doing something activity wise that's related to that subject, then I might want to seek knowledge outside of myself. But otherwise, if I really immerse myself in my experience of the activity, I will learn so much more about it. Like I will have such a deeper bond with what I'm doing as it pertains to me.
Mm-hmm.
You know, like, and I don't think we really know ourselves well enough to go, is this me? Like, am I just doing this thing because I think it's going to get me something? Or like, is this really me? Like, do I feel more connected to me and alive and like fucking awesome about this? You know? And if I hate it,
Yes.
what does that mean? You know?
Yeah. I I think a lot of people get stuck in that, like, trying to find themselves in terms of like what they enjoy the most, right? And I think people get so caught up on the "is this me" question, they don't even dedicate to something, right? To try. And this is something that I've experienced personally is like, not knowing. So like, okay, I have one thing that I really enjoy, but is there something else that I might want to do? Like, when I was like looking for a job outside of video, I was like, I don't know what else I want to do. Even though like I said, I kind of fell out of love with doing video work. I didn't know what else I would enjoy doing. And so people get so caught up in is this me, rather than, I mean, I feel like keeping yourself in like I guess I don't know where I'm going with this, but
It's an interesting paralysis.
yeah, for real.
I have almost like the opposite problem of like, I'm such a curious and like immersive kind of like person. Like, and like I told you, I'm a fucking extremist.
Yes,
So I'm like, I'm like, dude, I do meditation. I'm like, I was born to be a monk. You know what I mean? I wasn't just born to be a monk. I fucking am a monk, bro. All right, what do monks do? And then I'll fucking, go
start
down that
working at the
route.
gun store. I'm gonna go to the army, bro.
Well,
You know?
frankly, I've always wanted to be in the special forces. That was
Yeah.
my dream. My
Well, you
whole
want to know
fucking.
how many times I hear you say I've always wanted to?
That's what I'm saying. Like,
Yeah.
I look
You're
at shit and I'm like,
yeah.
oh fuck yeah. So it's
Yeah.
just interesting for me to hear that perspective, because I know a
Yeah.
lot of people that talk themselves out of it rather than talking themselves into it. And like I was saying, it's a balancing act, right?
Yeah.
So if your nature is to talk yourself out of stuff, then you need to talk yourself into more shit. I have the opposite thing where it's like I talk myself into so much shit that I need to fucking figure out, no, let's talk myself out of some of that shit to prioritize things so I can actually do it.
You chase 6 rabbits and you got to talk yourself into chasing one. I chase no rabbits. I got to talk myself into chasing one.
Yeah. I think I'm just so, and this really goes back to like, honestly, discovering yourself through love is like, I've always wanted to be loved. And like, this is something we don't really talk about as men, is like, and I don't really hear women talking about this either. But I'm not as tuned into like a lot of female podcasts just because of, it's not where I'm at.
Anyways.
But, mishandling people,
Yeah.
that's something where I've looked back on it, and I've had a really like, I got out of high school and like, I was really like, if you want to say like slut shamed, you know what I mean? Like it was like fish in a barrel, I was knocking them down. And then I got a lot of hell for that, like they talked a lot of shit about me. And then I was like, oh shit. So, and even like, post high school, that slowed down a lot for me because I had this like inner guilt factor about it, right? And so I wind up like living this like my name is Earl kind of life. And this also is in regards to like even just interactions I had with other dudes where I would like punk them out way unnecessarily, right? Where I was like, no, I was really out of line for that kind of shit. I let my mouth and my ego just go crazy. And so as I would come across these people, I would apologize to them, because it was lingering with me.
Yeah.
And like a lot of the chicks were like so beyond that, and they were like, no, I still want to be with you type shit. You know what I mean? Or dudes would be like, bro, I don't even remember that. And in my head, I'm like, do you remember that? Like, is that you? Like, I know you got to remember that shit, but I think it's really karmic debt, like that shit is like weighing on me where I can't get over it. There's lessons that I needed to learn and still need to learn, but there's some shit you can't really learn on your own in totality. right? Like you can
Yeah.
learn it in theory, but it's very different for you to say, "Oh, I'm not gonna argue with my chick, anymore." But when you're like mid aggravating situation, you know, little different theory versus experience of like
Yeah.
bringing that back of like, did that tenant really stick with you? Did that
Like
conviction
theory and
really like,
application.
yeah, like did that fucking thing that you said in that moment really matter to you? Like, did
Yeah.
you really learn the lesson from it? And I just think that in our society, we don't really give people the mercy that we need to in that department of like, no, that was someone just learning themselves. And we also don't really give them like an inlet or an outlet for that conversation to take place, in a way that I feel is super healthy. And in
Yeah, I
that
mean
way, I
like
feel like,
go
sorry, I
ahead.
was just one more thought. In the forgiveness department, I feel like I'm a very balanced individual. Like where and I think also there's extremeness there too, but um I think that's probably my most balanced attribute is submitting to my own consciousness and listening to what made me feel guilty and be like, no, I fucked that one up, you
Yeah.
know? And when you hurt someone that's a good person, like uh not that you're even trying to be a bad person, but it's usually like you're in a desperate situation where you're emotionally needy in some way, and it turns into a pathology and then an action, you know. But I think I don't know where I'm going with that, but there's something to it. It's just a kind of self-expression, really.
I think in terms of like what you're saying where we don't give people enough mercy, I think is what you said.
Mm-hmm.
Um I think that's partially because one, we all get caught up in our own world, right? So like you had this stuff on your conscience, and everyone else has their own shit on their conscience, right? And so it all puts them it puts us all in a certain state of mind depending on what we're thinking about that day, what's weighing on us that day, and all of that. If you haven't worked on maintaining yourself and controlling your emotions, and that doesn't mean controlling your emotions doesn't mean not feeling emotion. It means being able to control how you express them, right?
Mm.
Um, because it's perfectly healthy to express emotion, but if you have lack of control, that means you're going to explode, right? Um, in one way or another, good or bad. Um, and so, because we all have these things weighing on us, we tend to forget the things that we might have, that, like, for example, the people who said they forgot about slut shaming you or whatever, right? Um, or whatever bad issue may have happened between you and someone else, they might have forgotten about it because they didn't see it as that, but they were also focusing on their own shit.
Yeah, I think that's really what it is like taking ownership of um, like your own experience and understanding how to that someone else's experience isn't your experience, right?
Yeah,
Even though you're going through shit together, like, and it wasn't like slut shaming. It was like me being like, no, that was a good chick, but I just didn't treat her right. You know what I mean? That
okay.
kind of thing. Because I was in a fucked up place, you know, on my own, but it gets expressed in a different way, and that's why I say like your emotions. I guess this is kind of what I'm getting at is like points of failure, right? Your emotions highlight points of failure within the programming that you have, even on a psychological and really on a psychological level, before it ever gets to action. But I think because we're so like result oriented, and we fall in love with like the idea of what this journey is going to be, or like what the end goal of this journey is going to be, we fuck off the experience and the exploration part in between, and I
Yeah.
don't think that we're gracious enough in the discovery process. You know what I mean? Because the discovery comes from mistakes. So while you're exploring, especially if you're exploring shit together, such as like relationships, you know, there's inevitably going to be like weird shit that are just like, and it doesn't mean people are bad people, right?
Mm-hmm.
They're just like in a bad state, in a bad place when you happen to come across them, It doesn't give carte blanche, like there's some shit that's just fucking evil. But it's just really interesting to me that like looking back on my own life, especially as I'm maturing more and more, and really trying to like become the utmost accountable version of me that I can.
Mm-hmm.
It's almost like I'm getting to this point where the joy is really in the journey, because I understand the reward of something such as like fame might also be something that like has other aspects of it that make it less enjoyable than the
Yeah.
thought of it. And so I'm like, when you get there, like hopefully you got there because you've helped so many people. You know what I mean? That like you've offset this whole thing and you learn these lessons over here. And it's not that you're walking on water, but just, you got there by positive merit.
Yeah. I mean, like Joe Rogan talks about this all the time. He talks about the comparison between modern comedy and like old school comedy. And he talks about how back in the day, it was very rare that someone would help someone else along. It was always like trying to break each other down because it was, I guess, uh, competitive, right? It was competition.
Mm-hmm.
Well, nowadays, a lot of big comedians are putting on these newer, younger comedians that are killers because they want
Mm-hmm.
them to get the recognition, get the views, and get the popularity, so comedy continues to grow, right? And so like if you're doing that as you're going along, like you're putting on people who you see have talent and have skill, you can put them on and give them the ability and the platform to grow as well. That's the type of person that builds a reputation as, oh, that's a good person regardless of how famous they get, or
Mm-hmm.
and even when you continue to do it and you have massive success and you're like, okay, I'm super successful now this is even better for the people that I want to help because I have a bigger platform, I have more money, more resources, I know more people that I can connect them to, shit like that. And then you see these people and you're like, hey, I want to fucking help you. Call this person, say I told you, say whatever, right? And that's the type of person that I feel like most people should strive to be to if they want to have kind of like not necessarily guilt-free success, but a foundation of that's a good person who gains success because they're a good person
Mm-hmm.
type shit. You know what I'm
Yeah.
saying?
Dude, I'm like, I'm listening and I felt that. I'm like also just like really reflecting. I don't know how that shit got so deep. See, that's what I get for talking about some fucking karmic deck shit. I need to just leave that motherfucking shit in the past. But no, I really think the journeys that we're on, are super duper unique. And sometimes we just learn like bad habits before we understand that we even have them,
Yeah.
because we think that's what it means to be a man or a woman. You know what I mean? And I've talked about this before, but that's like me being young and like my mom and dad separating me and me being like, as a 4-year-old, like I need to be a man. It's like, I don't even know what the fuck a man, like what it means, you know? This is this concept, you know? And I think in the words of my mom, we're all little kids in big pants. And so we still have that naivety about what we're dreaming of sometimes. And until you fall in love with the work, you're not gonna truly appreciate what it means to be that thing, and you're not really gonna know it.
Yeah.
You know, in totality, you're gonna be you're gonna have guilt and imposter syndrome because you're underdeveloped in the nuances that take you from good to motherfucking excellent. And that's the mic drop. Boom. End of the podcast, bitches. Why? Because I can't wrap that shit up any motherfucking better than next week. We're gonna just wrap it right there. Zach, if you got anything to say, no. Peace out. Peace.
Later.